Thank you for joining us for our first of the series of conversations with AIFF. I'm April Rank, the director of the festival, now in its 7th year of production. And Conversations is an extension of our community building and awareness for independent filmmaking. Stick around for the conversation.
Welcome. My name is John Rule. I'm the owner of Rule Boston Camera, and we are a equipment sales and rental company here in Boston, Mass. And we rent equipment to the motion picture industry, to documentary filmmakers, to corporate environments, into schools, higher education. And I'm really excited to be here talking to Rick Beyer, who's a documentary filmmaker and author. Who's written a new book called Rivals Unto Death, which is a story of Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. But tonight, we are going to mention this.
We have already mentioned it.
We may touch on this again later, but I had the best time doing a little bit of research on you and the projects that you've done. And in particular, I'm going to recommend that everybody has to see this film, Ghost Army, which I had the pleasure of seeing before this interview. And it's a remarkable story, which I won't tell. I'll let Rick talk about it. But so, as a vehicle for discussing the film, I wonder if you can talk about how you, as a history buff, have chosen the topics that you're going to do documentaries on or books on, and then what was it about this story? How did you get drawn into this particular story about the Ghost Army?
So to start with, I've always hated history buff. So I like history enthusiast. Buff always seems to involve no clothes. So I like history enthusiast much better.
Okay.
And I, of course, have been a history, or a nutcase is another word, right? So I've been a history enthusiast my entire life since I was a small boy, and introduced to history by all my history books in my mom and dad's house. Do I choose topics, or do topics choose me? And sometimes it's a matter of a commercial choice. I made a lot of films for the History Channel. If the History Channel wanted X and was willing to pay for it, that's the film that I wanted to make. The Ghost Army is a completely different story. It was actually the first documentary I made that I did as an independent film. And it was because I met somebody whose uncle was in the unit, and I was intrigued by the story. And John, the thing you know is that making a documentary is really hard. It can take a long time. This took 8 years to get this documentary made, raising the money, interviewing the people, doing the research, trying to persuade PBS to run it, because eventually it was on PBS. And so I think one of the most important things when you're choosing a topic or letting a topic choose you is to have passion for it. Because if you don't believe that this is a story that it's so important to tell, that it's so meaningful to tell, that maybe it's not going to change people's lives, but it's going to really make an impression on them, then boy, do you really want to bother spending 5, 6, 7, 8 years and all this effort to make a film? So that's kind of, I think that as I say, sometimes it's a commercial choice, or it involves different reasons, but in an independent film like this, I think it's all about what passion, what lights your soul up. And sometimes it's serendipity. What stories do you find out about that somebody else didn't find out about? Because this was a story that, although people had written books about the Ghost Army, nobody had ever made a documentary film about it. So that's great for the filmmaker, right? I'd rather be the first film than be the second or third or fifth.
Yeah. And so you touched on some of the different aspects of making this film as you would make any documentary. And so the research phase, the raising money phase, the acquisition, the editing, and all that. So where do you find your comfort zone in those different phases? Obviously, raising money may not be your favorite part of the project.
When people ask me what I learned making the Ghost Army film, that's always my first answer, is I learned how to be a fundraiser. Yeah. And being a fundraiser actually sounds awful. When people say, well, how do you raise money? I say, you ask people you know to give you money. And so it's like, oh, that sounds awful. I said, no, it's not awful at all. Because what it really is about, it's not really about fundraising. It's about outreach. I am passionate about this project, so I am going to try to share my passion with you till you want to be involved in the project some way. So the best donor that I can find is the donor who feels that I'm doing them a favor by giving them a chance to be involved with the project and support the project. And we had tremendous donors, and it was a great pleasure to have all those people involved. So I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I mean, you know, shooting is always fun. Shooting is always the fun part. Whenever you think about being a filmmaker in any genre, whether it's a Hollywood film or a documentary or whatever, you think of people out there with the cameras rolling in the field, and that's a blast. Personally, as both an author and a filmmaker, I love research. I love whether it's library research or whether it's interviewing 92-year-old guys who were in World War II or whether it's digging through footage at the National Archives. I love that detective work of finding stuff and hopefully finding story bits or footage bits or something that other people haven't found and then being able to put them together in a way that other people haven't done.
Yeah, so I do want to ask you about that aspect of it, because, you know, as you're describing the National Archives, I'm just imagining you, you know, dressed in a clean suit, you know, holding bits of film up to the light to see what it is that you have. So how does that process work?
I'm going to blow your mind because it's not anything like that. So the National Archives in College Park is this really huge building, and you go up to the section where films are. First of all, there's a whole bunch of stuff that they have videotape screeners that are on 3/4-inch tape, which, as you know, is not a format that anyone's used for anything serious in the last 25 years. But if you're doing computer research or you're combining computer research with talking to the people there to find a specific thing or specific film, and they'll come out with a work print of the film on a reel, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter, and you put it on a flatbed, and you play it on the flatbed, and you look on it in a little monitor on the film flatbed like the old days, right? And if you see something you want, then you're going to ask, you then basically have to go through this whole procedure to request a copy be made of it, or it be digitized into video now, of course, because we're not really using film for too much anymore. I'm not. And but it's it's very casual in a lot of ways. I'm dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, and there's a lot of people doing research, and there's a lot of people who work there who are very knowledgeable about what they've got. But their supplies are so vast, and it's all someplace else. It's all behind some closed doors, and so you write your little slip, and it goes into the to the human machine there, and out 45 minutes later or so comes a cart with the films you want, and then you're rolling them in and putting them on the flatbed and looking at them. And it's a great, doing footage research is just fun. And you discover things. In this film, suddenly discover a piece of footage shot in this small town that was the subject of one of the scenes in the film. And it was shot the same week as the GIs were there who were in this unit in the Ghost Army, this being a film set in World War II. So, yeah, it's a great place to go.
That is incredible. And there's a lot of footage in the film that obviously I had never seen before, and from talking to you earlier, it seems like there's just a lot more footage of World War II than we perhaps imagined.
Well, there's a ton of footage of World War II, and we should say that this story, the Ghost Army, is a story of a U.S. Army deception unit in World War II that used inflatable tanks and sound effects and illusion to fool the Germans. And a little plug in there for the Ghost Army. And but there is tremendous amounts of footage, and there's a lot of color footage, and we found a lot of color footage that we were able to use and really make it feel much more contemporary than it would with that old black and white footage.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to sharing some of that footage with the audience. So when we come back, we're going to take a look at some clips from Ghost Army and as well as some other projects that Rick has done. Welcome back. So we talked a little bit with Rick about some of the stuff that he's worked on, and I was amazed when I started looking through the various projects that he's produced that there was no one style of documentary filmmaking, that he mixes and matches and uses a number of different techniques depending on the project. So I wonder if we can maybe take a look at a clip from one of your films. And
sure. So of course, as a history filmmaker, you're just trying to get at the story the best way you can, and that's why I think it's different different kinds of history filmmaking for different kinds of stories. So for the first clip, I thought I'd show something from The Ghost Army, which is the film about the World War II unit that used inflatable tanks and sound effects to fool the Germans in World War II. And this is it's a pretty standard filmmaking style for a history film, which is archival footage, interviews, put together to tell the story. So why don't we take a look at it?
Perfect.
There was a little bundle of stuff, which a tank was in, all compressed before you opened the bundle, spread the nozzles around, and inflated it.
Pulling this amorphic shape out of it, and then watching it being filled with air and taking form, like a monster.
If things went very well, there were air compressors. If things went not so well, there were bicycle pumps. And if things went terribly badly, there were our lungs.
In most cases, like a German tank, we could have it inflated and moved within 15 or 20 minutes.
The artillery piece was good. The Jeep was good. But that M4 tank, that was the beauty. That was a piece of work. It really was.
So,
Wow.
you kind of get the idea that this, of course, is the segment where they're working with those inflatable tanks. And, when I made the film, it's interesting, when you start a film and you've shot all this material, and where do you start? Somebody gave me a great piece of advice once. They said, start with a scene that you know is going to be in the final film. There's no doubt in your mind it's going to be in the final film. This was the first scene that I edited for the first rough cut of this film, was this scene, and it probably is pretty much unchanged from that first edit all the way to the end.
Well, it's really quite striking, the image of that tank being pushed about by a guy.
That 60 seconds of inflatable tank footage is probably all of the World War II era inflatable tank footage that there is, and it's been used in other documentaries, but there's literally like very little other footage of that. So we had still pictures of it, but almost no other footage than that footage right there.
So that's your more traditional documentary type of way of approaching the material, where you have your archival footage, which I know you fought so hard to get.
Right. And we did have a lot of color footage in the film. We just didn't have it in the clip.
Yeah. And then your traditional interview type, and I imagine that it must be sort of a sense of responsibility that you're interviewing the last people to have seen this actual event and lived through it.
I felt like I was, the word documentary comes from documenting.
Yeah.
And I really felt like I was documenting this, and if I didn't do it, ultimately nobody else was going to. And the stories that these guys told, whether they're the ones that made it in the film or the ones that didn't, would be lost. And that is why I'm a documentary filmmaker, is to try to preserve those stories, because they're great stories, and they show us that, in this case, World War II maybe wasn't exactly the way we always read about it, that it might be richer and more complex and different. So that is a sense of responsibility.
Yeah, I get it. So maybe you have another clip and maybe a different style, something else that...
Well, sure. It's really hard. For example, I had to make a film for the town of Lexington about the events leading up to the first day of the Revolution, which took place in Lexington, Massachusetts. It's really hard to interview Revolutionary War veterans. There's not too many of them around anymore.
There's a couple.
Not so much. And so you don't want to have it all be paintings and paintings of paintings. So now you get into using reenactments, having actors play some parts. So in the clip we're going to see, it's a scene shot in a tavern talking about the building of sentiment towards revolution. And there's an actor, a wonderful actor named Timothy John Smith, who's playing John Adams, and the words that he speaks are John Adams' real words. So why don't we take a look at that?
Great.
Across the colonies, in taverns like John Buckman's in Lexington, men debate the latest developments. Sitting by the fire in one country tavern, John Adams overhears just such a discussion.
As I believed I was unknown to all of them, I sat in total silence to hear them. One said, What would you say if a fellow should come to your house to tell you that he was come to make a list of all your cattle, that Parliament might tax you for them at so much a head? What would I say, replied another? I would knock him on the head. Well, if Parliament can take away Mr. Hancock's wharf and Mr. Rowe's wharf, they can take away your barn and my house. After much more reasoning in this style, a farmer, who had as yet been silent, broke out.
I think it's high time we rebel.
So you see in a clip like that, you can, just because it happened before we had film, we can still do a lot with that story and have some fun with it. But it still is a documentary in the sense that the words that John Adams is speaking are John Adams' real words. When the farmer says it's high time we rebel, this is something that John Adams heard someone say in a country tavern. So we're not really, to my mind, crossing the line over into movie making, Hollywood movie making. We're using maybe some of those techniques, but we're staying very close to the idea of the documentary.
But I think still you have the opportunity to shade history a little bit, to add your own voice to the events that actually took place at that time, as opposed to archival footage, which stands by itself.
Well, you have to interpret. So, you know, part of it is, am I trying to express my own opinion, or am I trying to kind of divine the closest thing that I think to might be what actually happened, or trying to find a visual manner of conveying the real story. And these may be semantics of these different points of view. I mean, but your point is correct in that you have to decide, you have to cast the people, and how are they going to say the lines, and which lines you're going to use, and how are you going to make the tavern look. We did a reenactment of the Battle of Lexington. Are you going to make the British into aggressors? How many of the colonials are you going to show firing? These are controversial issues. Who fired the first shot? So you have to come up with your best way of interpreting those, and your opinion might kind of filter into that at some point.
As it should.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. I, as a filmmaker and as an author, really am trying to present, hopefully in a vivid and compelling way, history that I am really excited about and passionate about, but I'm not necessarily trying to tell you what to think.
Sure.
I want you, and I started my career 40 years ago as a journalist. I want to report on what's going on. I don't want to take the Fox slogan and say, we report, you decide, but that really is what I'm trying to do in my documentary filmmaking, which I think is just journalism focused on the past.
Great. Thank you, Rick. When we come back, we're going to be talking with April Renk from the Arlington International Film Festival.
Thank you, John and Rick, for both being guest here on this first conversation with AIFF. We're experimenting to see, you know, just what we can bring together for the community. And from the festival's point of view, we've been intimately connected with Rule Camera, who has been our sponsor for 7 years, and we thank you for that.
Wow, it's a long time.
Very happy to be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as an accomplished filmmaker, I'm curious, your relationship with film festivals. Have you explored that route with most of your films, especially Ghost Army?
So the Ghost Army premiered at the Salem Film Festival 3 or 4 years ago, and 4 years, I guess, now. And I think it's appeared at about 6 film festivals, and I just really think a film festival is a great place to show a film and really get an idea of what the audience thinks of it, and especially April, when you're building an audience, as you have been for the last 7 years, so you get people to have an expectation of great films, and they're going to want to see that. And that's why I've been very excited. I can't say I've been involved for 7 years, but I'm in my 2nd year of involvement in the festival as a judge, and I've also been a judge at another film festival. So, you know, and it's exciting because you get a chance to see what people are doing, what young people are doing, what people overseas are doing, which I love seeing in the Arlington Film Festival. because it's the international part in all these films. And so all these people who are probably potential competitors, which is a little upsetting, but great to see the films that they're making.
Well, although we are on over 150 film boards with our call for entries, it still amazes us the number of local filmmakers that submit, and the quality of filmmaking that's right here in our neighborhoods here. And filmmakers will often not even know one another, so that was part of what we wanted to do, was like bring the filmmaking community together more with this conversation series. It's kind of interesting because many of our films have had the opportunity of going on to be nominated for Oscars. Some have been picked up by the State Department to travel, and others purchased by PBS and HBO. So everyone does not get that recognition, but at least just to get screened, you know, on the big in the big theaters.
Yeah,
is
and
nice.
and sometimes it's for filmmakers, it might be their only shot at getting an audience to see what they're doing, and it might be, if you've made a short film, it's not going to be a PBS documentary. It's not going to be a feature-length thing that somebody's going to go see in the theater. So a film festival is a great place to kind of highlight that work, and that might give them the inspiration to go on then and do more and create something else because of the feedback that they've gotten from a festival like this one or other film festivals. You know, don't you think?
Yeah, and I also think that the sense of community that's promoted by a local film festival is unlike anything else. You know, being able to sit in the big theater, you know, surrounded by people who are equally interested in the arts, getting to know people that you otherwise might not come across.
Yes.
And you know, not all of them are filmmakers, but there are people who want to get out and see some culture and get to know other people in their town, and it's been a great experience just going to see the films that you guys have put on.
And from the point of view of an audience member too, great to be able to often talk to a filmmaker after a film and get, you know, hear about the problems that they had or hear about why they made the choices that they did. And a lot of times, of course, there's other filmmakers in the audience who are trying to learn and figure out from that. So it is almost kind of an incubator for creativity in filmmaking.
I see a lot of working together with film festivals now, and I know the founder of AIFF has really worked to do a lot of co-sponsorship with other festivals. So it's not this feeling so much of competition as it was 7 years ago among festivals, but more like a support of and an encouragement for more screenings of these amazing films. So you're absolutely right. Community building is a huge piece of this.
And there's so many films, right? There's the ability to make films, the technology that you're putting out there that's available, to use a DSLR camera, to use a GoPro, to use an iPhone, to be able to shoot a film that way, means that you are allowing people who never could have been filmmakers before to become filmmakers and to have their vision and their views be part of what we're looking at in this and other festivals.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've noticed is that with technology, you know, you definitely have the effect of people who might not otherwise be able to afford to be able to put their stories out there can, but there's also this aspect of technology enabling shots that you could never get otherwise. You know, cameras that are super good in low light, and now you can get this beautiful candlelit scene that would have required a huge crew 10 years ago. You know, being able to move about with a very lightweight camera and lens package.
The whole show Wolf Hall, I think, was all of their interior scenes, which take place in the 1600s or sometime like that, are all shot with the natural light, with the candlelight, with the lantern light, and the modern equipment lets you do that, and it opens up all these vistas that weren't open before.
Yeah. Or even just using a drone instead of you know, a crane shot that would have required, you know, thousands of dollars and you know, 10 crew members to get. You know, there's just so many more possibilities now than there ever were, and it's mainly just because things are smaller, lighter, cheaper, better, and so it's been amazing, and to see that trend borne out in the kind of stories that we're seeing right now it's been remarkable.
from a business perspective, it must really be challenging for you to keep up with the technology and the changes.
Yes.
So
It's already changed in the time that we've been talking here,
Exactly.
probably.
That's right.
I mean, you have to be the pros, right, to be able
Yeah.
to give instruction on how to use this equipment when people come in?
Yeah, and but that's the really exciting part of the job, right? It's you know, we have to know what's new, what's worthy, what's relevant, and that makes it really exciting because things are changing. But at the same time, you know, the basics are there. You know, when you're creating a story, you're trying to create a human connection. You're trying to you know, inform people or entertain people, and none of that changes. But the exciting part.
Well, I was just about
I was.
to ask.
I
Were
was.
you?
But,
You've produced
yeah.
films.
Well, I went to college. I went to Emerson College as a film student.
Okay.
And
It's story and character,
You know,
and that's
yeah.
it's what we've talked about. It's what sustains you throughout, whatever your technique. It's story and character that make the film.
Do you
Absolutely.
still play around with filmmaking?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No, no. I enjoy behind the camera much more.
Okay.
And actually behind the scenes.
I was gonna say, I know a place where you can access some equipment if you need to,
Yeah.
if you want to scratch that itch.
Yeah. No, I love the technology, and I love to see what the technology can put up on the screen. And that to me has been the most exciting part of my career is just watching how that has changed over the years.
Well, thank you again to both of you. It's
Thank
been
you so
very
much. What a
enjoyable.
great pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.